moving on from variables, we have collections. And the first type of collection we have in Swift, there are roughly 3 that you will generally use. The first lot of these are called arrays. Now, an array stores a whole collection of variables, as you might guess, and it stores these in an ordered list. So I might have some strings that say 6 eggs, milk, flour, baking powder, and bananas. And then these are all indexed. So in Swift, we start our indexes at 0, going upwards until we've reached the end of our array. So an index of 0 means that is the very first element inside of our array. That's important to remember. Arrays are what we call 0 indexed. That means the first element starts at index 0 and not 1. That will catch you out if you are a beginner quite a few times. Still gets me out very occasionally. Okay, let's open up an Xcode playground and implement some of these arrays in our playground and see what they can do. Right, with your playground open, let's create an array of integers. So, as with variables, we start with the keyword var, and then we give this array a name, some ints. And we are going to make this equal to, and here we have the universal language for an array in pretty much every programming language. And that is 2 square brackets. And then inside of those square brackets, we specify the type of array, which is integer. And then we need to add one more thing to this, and that is what we call initializer. So I'm going to add an open and close bracket. And what that does is it creates the array for us, which currently has nothing inside us. Inside us. It has nothing inside of it. There is nothing in that array. There are no elements. So that's how we create a simple array. So how do we create an array of strings? Well, that's pretty simple. Sum strings is equal to the same syntax, except we specify that this array is full of the type string. Now, what if we wanted to add a value to these arrays? Well, these arrays come with what's called a method. And the method does all the heavy lifting for you to add the thing that you want to add. So, for example, if we come up here and we say some ints, and if you notice on the right-hand side, this will have nothing inside it. That's expected. We can add something by using append. And notice what comes up. It says void append new element integer. So that new element integer says, give me the integer that you want to add to this. So if we hit enter, it auto-completes. If you hit enter again, it auto-completes integer, but we don't need that. We can remove that, and we can add an integer, let's say the number 8. And now, we now have the number 8 added to our array. Now, there's another way we can actually add integers to this. So we can say some ints, and this is a programming shorthand. We can say plus equals, and that means it should add what's about to come up on the right-hand side to our integer array. So all we have to do is open a square bracket, drop in the number 4, and close that square bracket. And now some ints has 2 members, 8 and 4. So you could keep doing this forever and ever. And this is pretty useful when you're going round and round a loop and you're adding arrays according to whatever logic you have in your program. Of course, we can do exactly the same for some strings. We can say dot append, and we can add our new element. We can also have some strings, and we can have plus equals, open and close our square brackets, and we can put the abbreviation of my last name. So now our string array contains 2 items. But notice what happens if I try to add a number, the number 7. I would expect an error because the array can only carry 1 type of variable. So we obviously cannot do this. Now, obviously, we don't want to add arrays one by one. So just remove this line. We can actually add multiple variables to our array. So I can add pasta here and wine because I just had some at lunch. There we go. We had some pasta and wine. Great. So that's a nice handy shortcut. Obviously, you can initialize your array when you first declare it. So up here under var SumStrings, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this is an array of strings, and I'm going to make it equal to, I'm going to delete these two brackets and put two square brackets. So this is very similar to this syntax, except up here we're initializing it. We're creating the SumStrings variable. So in here I can say, what have we got? Pizza. I must be hungry. I'm writing all these things down. Barbecue. And now we have an array created with pizza and barbecue. And later on, those values get added to our array down here. So I can check them out in this little explorer on the side. Great, so that's how you handle sorting them out. But something else you're going to have to do many times is count how many things are inside of an array. And that's important when you go around loops, because sometimes you'll get data and you won't know how many elements there are. So you have to count it. So let's have SumStrings dot and start to type count. And you'll notice it gives you count, which returns an integer. That's what the left-hand side of that little autocomplete means. It's going to give you back a whole number, because obviously you can't have half an element. Our count will show up on the right-hand side. There are 6 elements in this array. Perfect. Right, so you know how many elements are in there, but let's say we have our array here and we want to grab element number 2, which, if you remember, is actually element number 3 because we start counting at 0. So how do we get that? Well, that's, again, simple enough. We can have SumStrings. We open a square bracket, and we give it the index of the thing that we want, which is element number 2. And we close our square bracket. And that returns back to us grunt as we expect. Now, here's a little tricky bit. If I go beyond 1, 2, 3, 4, if I try to access number 5, look what happens. It doesn't exist. Or does it? Hang on a second. 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I think it does exist. Whoops. Let's try go for number 8. And we should have, there we go. We have an error. Actually, I'm wondering, oh, of course, we have 6 elements, don't we? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so number 8 doesn't exist. And so we get an error, a horrible error. And this is one that's going to get you out quite a few times. But there are practical ways of avoiding that completely. So as you develop as a developer, if you'll pardon the pun, then that error will kind of disappear. So whatever you do, don't try and access an array outside of what we call its bounds. Its bounds are the minimum and maximum of the array. Obviously, you can never access element -1 because it just doesn't make any sense, and you can't access element 8. Okay, now those are very basic arrays, and there are tons more things you can do, but we'll learn that as we go. Congratulations! You made it to the end of this video, which puts you in the top 10% of my viewers. For each one of you, there are 9 others who didn't make it this far. That perseverance you've shown means that you're much more likely to succeed as a developer. Now, to help you on your way, I want to give you the next part of my iOS course completely free. No trials, no credit cards, instant access. Simply click the link below the video to ensure that you don't miss out.